Really interesting about all these diets is that 90% of 90% of diets is the same thing. Now, I made that number up, but it gets to the point that
he's exaggerating, folks.
They are far more similar than they are dissimilar. And so, in fact, I just have a funny little saying I call, which is the 90%, right? So 90% of diets are 90% the same. And it's interesting because that 90% of what they're telling you to do is very similar to the very recent governmental guidelines.
Interesting.
Now, for those of you that really want some actual help of what to do, I will give you these, what I call 7 points of the 90%. So number one, if you're trying to, whether you're trying to gain muscle mass or lose fat, it does come down to caloric balance, right? You have got to be positive or negative. Now, a lot goes into, because it's not simply calorie counting.
Right. Yeah, the conversation on thermodynamics has advanced a lot, but again, not for today.
Absorption, it's that exact. It is very true. But at some point, you have to be in the right place calorically. That's all they're doing, right? Number two, you generally want 50 to 75% of your plate to be vegetable, right? Now, that may be something like 40 to 50% of your actual calories because vegetables are very calorically sparse, which means it can occupy a huge percentage of your plate and only be 30% of your actual calorie intake. This is one of the reasons why we talk about vegetables are so good. You can feel full all the time, but actually be hypocaloric.
Right.
Your fats and proteins then should occupy somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 35% each of the remaining calories. And so if you look at the basic recommendations, it's, hey, about a third of your calories should be protein, about a third of them should be good fats, and then about a third of them should be good vegetable sources, which, if you're unaware, most vegetables are mostly carbohydrate. So that puts you in a pretty good spot. Number 5, focus most of the time on eating real food, which is alive, things that are healthy. Try to minimize processed. That's not to say canned food or bars are totally terrible for you, but most of the time focus on real food first. Number 6, when you're consuming these vegetables and these fruits to some extent, sometimes you should eat them raw, sometimes you should eat them cooked. It goes actually back to your opener of variety.
Right.
So one of the things, as a very quick example, does a microwave kill all the nutrients? Who cares? Just eat the vegetable. I don't think most people are really at the point where the loss of nutrients in the microwave is that important relative to I ate steamed vegetables that I made in a microwave versus I didn't go to Pizza Hut. That's probably a win. Take spinach. Okay, now spinach has a lot of vitamins and has a lot of minerals. And very quickly, minerals are often hard to extract. We call them low bioavailability. Iron is a great example in spinach, right? Which means if you consume a lot of spinach and you eat it raw, you will extract a bunch of the vitamins, a bunch of the antioxidants out of it, but you'll have a hard time getting and digesting the minerals because you can't really unpack them in your gut and they're end up going to be low availability. If you cook the spinach, you will burn up a lot of the antioxidants, you will lose a lot of the vitamins, but you will denature or unfold a lot of those minerals, which increases their bioavailability. This leads directly into point number 7 of the 90%, which is you want to maximize your variety. You should have a bunch of different foods in different colors, in combinations, with a variety of cooking methods. And if you do these 7 things, I think you can play nicely in between those 2 foundations you opened up the show with, which is this idea of variety or palate versus abundance and needing to consume everything.
Right.
If you eat the right foods, you should be able to eat a lot of food very often and not feel like you're restricting yourself. And if you do it with a lot of variety, you'll keep your palate fresh, you won't get bored of foods, and more importantly, you will consume a wide range of phytochemicals, nutrients, vitamins, and other small molecules that are very important for your health and well-being. Talking about with all of these things is coming back to adherence. So clearly the way we're delivering the information or what we're telling them to do is coming through in a manner that is not effective, which is a nice way I like to think about this is the success of a system is predicated more on the compatibility and the execution than the merit of the system itself.
Right.
If you put yourself on a diet plan or workout plan or any financial plan, whatever it is, and it doesn't work for your lifestyle, your taste preferences, your religious beliefs, your sleep patterns, if it's not compatible with your lifestyle, you will lose. I promise you, life will win over food. It just happens. That is more important than the actual diet itself. So whether you picked paleo or zone or if it fits your macro, that is not even remotely as important as did you put yourself in a situation that actually works for you, that you like, that is the foods you like and the way you prepare them, and you're not eating food you find disgusting, and that you can execute on a day-to-day basis over the course of months. If you didn't do those two things, it doesn't matter which system you picked, it will fail. Hopefully we've inspired you a little bit with this chapter and demystified nutrition. If we've done that, I did want to leave you with a little bit of execution. So here is a 3-step system to help you integrate the new plan, that whatever you put yourself on. Now, I have to give a little bit of credit. John Berardi and his company Precision Nutrition has a very similar system here. I would encourage you to check out their approach if you like this or this rings a bell with you. But basically, number one, when you first put yourself on a new plan or you decide to make a change, the first thing I think you should do is include new foods rather than exclude things, which is basically a way of saying fix your deficiencies first. What I have found is most people don't consume enough micronutrients, not enough good quality fats, and probably not enough protein. So step number one, identify if you are low in any of those things and then start including them. Now, that's actually contrary to what most people think, because traditionally people start off diets by taking a bunch of shit away, right? And I don't like that approach, because if you look at fundamentally what it does is it changes your relationship with food into a conversation about, is this food item bad for me? Or how bad is this food item? Versus, is this good for me, or how good is this? I want you to do the latter. So every time you're making your choice, think about, is this the best possible option for me? Rather than, well, hey, how bad is a fat-free wheat then? I don't know. We're making gradients of levels of shittiness. So it's really easy to make choices if you don't have a lot of information in this nutrition space, if you just take that approach. I'm going to make the best choice possible every time. I want to ask you a favor that's one of the most annoying questions you get, and you probably get it a lot, but I want it anyways. Imagine there's a listener at home, maybe new into fitness or not into it at all, and says, okay, you've convinced me, I want to do this well-rounded. Can you just give them a very basic and general, okay, a week workout would do this then. Monday, I would say do this, Wednesday do this, and Friday do this. And if they want to be, give me something basic.
Yeah, I would use the formula that you laid out. First of all, I would say get out in the sunshine and move around for an hour, at least a week. Literally get in whatever sunlight your situation provides, even if it's clouded. Additionally, if you don't have many means, if you're getting out on foot or on bike or even in a pool, let's say, most ideally in sunlight, the other thing that you can do is find a hill that takes you, when you push yourself to get up it, somewhere between 30 seconds and 60 seconds to get to the top.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. You and I, Andy, could go back and forth about what is the most favorable work-rest adaptation, and I could point you 50 different ways to why you would want to rest longer or shorter. But the bottom line is, get to the bottom of the hill, sprint to the top of it as fast as you can, let your heart rate come down a little bit, go back up, do it again. Do that a handful of times, anywhere between 4 and 6 times, depending on the length of the hill. That will provide, again, assuming that you have very little means to do much of anything, massive adaptation. And you can corroborate that clinically. I can corroborate that from the field and having done that for decades. And then last, let's say you don't have much other than your current body weight. Now, you and I both favored and biased something heavy, but in the meantime, that could be a body weight and overloading the body. If you have a tree or a pull-up bar to pull yourself up and over and you have the capacity to pull, then do so. If you don't have that capacity to pull, then start with some sort of push-up variation. Work it to a capacity every week, exceed whatever number you did in the prior week. You can break that into sets, one maximal set per week. However that needs to look for you. It does not have to be horribly sophisticated.
Yeah. If we're talking about sustainable long-term overload, you've got really two options. Number one is a micro overload. So you're making extremely small increases over a long period of time. And I'm not talking about, hey, put on 5 more pounds every week. Like, that's going to last about 4 weeks.
Right.
And then you're crushed. It's got to be an ounce every week for the next year or something like that. That's how you do it, because it's a small insult. Your body can handle that and it won't break you. Or you have these larger increases in overload coupled immediately, though, with massive recovery. So this is a really tough challenge, a back-off day. Kenny, it's similar to how you set it up, right? With 30% of your workouts during the month are very, very physically challenging, but the other 70% are practice, improvement. They're a good workout, but you're not beating the door down because you can't go there very often, right? Long-term sustainability is going to be a combination of different modes. And what we need to do is achieve this overload we've been talking about. But how do we do this over a long period of time? Variation. And that's why things like CrossFit took off very well, because it did expose people to variation who, at the time, 15 years ago, it was really tough to come up with these things on your own. We didn't really have a system for any of that stuff. P90X comes along. Here's your system. Here's your constant variation. But the problem with those initially was they didn't manage the overload. They gave you tons of variation, but they smashed you with overload. So now we're finally in this place where we can say, yes, we have this health data. We know what predicts mortality, strength, and cardiovascular fitness, and your ability to go max heart rate and all these things. For the average person, to me, this looks something like probably once a week, you should do something that is more akin to strength training. And by that, I mean heavy. And I'm not talking 3-pound dumbbells for circuits, for sets of 30 and rounds. I'm something that is very, very heavy, whatever that means to you. 1 day a week should probably do something more akin to your traditional cardiovascular training. So 30, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever that is for you, of sustained continuous work. Doesn't have to be running, doesn't have to be cycling. You could be pushing a sled, whatever you want. The tool, the mode is less important than what's the physiological overload. And then probably 1 day a week that takes you up to a maximum heart rate. This could be a kettlebell circuit. It could be a combination. It could be intervals on the track. If you do those 3 pieces, something heavy, something endurance-based, long-term endurance-based, and something interval-based, for the normal person, that's going to make you a very, very, very healthy person in the long term. And it is extremely sustainable if you use a lot of variation within that.
Discipline. Discipline has to be about you. It has to be about what your goals are and how you treat yourself. And no matter what your goal is, like I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to improve my cognitive function, or I want to improve my emotional state, or I'm going to meditate every day for 30 days and you miss 5 days and feel like you fell off the wagon. You didn't fuck up. Just goals are goals. Discipline ultimately is how you treat yourself. It's this concept of I'm going to do what's best for me and I'm going to stay on track ultimately, even if there's some leeway, even if 80% of the time I eat clean and 20% of the time I fuck off, even if 80% of the days I get my meditation in and 20% of the time other shit comes up and I don't get the meditation in. There's no need to beat yourself up. You just get back on it. You get back on the wagon. You go back to doing what you know is good for you. And you dive in wholeheartedly to the things that can help you grow. You dive into meditation. You dive into the books and the literature. And, you know, as Einstein and Tim Ferriss and a lot of people have said, you stand on the shoulders of giants by reading their work. People put fucking years into these books to tell you everything they know, to give you what they're an expert at. And the right books can change your life. You know, if I watch TV, I'll watch Game of Thrones. I'll be entertained by TV for sure. I still watch a lot of documentaries. But when I read nonfiction. I read books that I know I can take something from. And not every book I read is going to be worthwhile. Not every book you read will resonate with you. You might read A New Earth and say, the fuck is this guy talking about? And it doesn't sink in. Similarly to the way I skimmed over the Qigong practice in Paul Chek's How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. At the right time, those words will resonate with you. But that doesn't mean to stop. That doesn't mean to stop trying to figure out what are the ways you can live better. And your diet, what you put in your body, your movement. Paul Chek talks about the last 4 doctors you'll ever need. And it is the most simplified version of what this guy knows. But you have Dr. Quiet. That's your sleep, your rest patterns, your circadian rhythm. It's also your meditation practice, your mindfulness practice. Dr. Diet, the food you put in your body, the supplements you take, how you construct a healthy living environment and boost your life force energy through food and water. Then we have Dr. Movement. What's your movement practice? Your exercise, and not even just exercise, walking, being in nature, hiking. Of course, the exercise, the working out, and then the working in, doing Qigong, Tai Chi, breath work as you move. That's all movement as well as Dr. Quiet. And then Dr. Happy, perhaps the ultimate. Do you fucking play? Do you play enough? Something that I've dealt with my whole life was being too serious. Got that from my parents, got that from football coaches, got that from a lot of people, but I embodied it. So ultimately, it's on me. It's not on the teachers that gave me that seriousness. It's on me to embody that. And that's a word that's come up in ayahuasca as well. People purge in these ceremonies. They throw up. You can have violent number 2s. I've had it all, but I've never laughed as a purge. And I had always heard people laughing. And I was like, they're not respecting the ceremony. They're not respecting the quiet time, the fucking personal space. This is meditation. We're trying to do work. I can't focus on my own shit with this guy cackling next to me like a hyena. And a shaman told me, like, no, that is a purge. That laughter is a purge that person needs. It may be that they haven't laughed in a while. It may be a number of things, but that laughter is a purge. And somewhere, I think around my 20th ceremony, I had uncontrollable laughter. And it blew me away. And I was trying to keep quiet to be respectful of others, just with the fucking past issues I had with other people laughing. And the more I tried to keep quiet, the more it came out of me, the more I laughed. And I asked, why am I laughing so much? And the answer was, it's not that serious. And so I said, oh, okay, the ayahuasca ceremony is not that serious. And quickly I was corrected. No, it's not that serious. Life is not that serious. And that fucking blew me away. I personally took life so seriously. Every fucking thing that happens had so much weight to it. And the truth is, none of it does. We're here to experience. We're here to learn and to grow and to share with one another, to lift each other up, to get back up. There's a great quote in Batman Begins. It's funny, I'm getting choked up thinking about this fucking Batman Begins quote out of all the things I've talked about. But it really hit home when I watched this. I've seen the movie 100 times, but this always gets me. When young Bruce Wayne falls down, and I think it's his dad or Alfred that picks him up and says, "Why do we fall, Master Wayne?" So we can learn to get back up. That's what it's all about. We're going to fall. How do we pick ourselves back up again? How do we recover from that knockout? Nothing's going to keep us down. And to embody that, to know inside, through and through, that I will get back up, that I will survive, and that I won't just survive, I'll fucking thrive. I will enjoy the shit out of this life. I'll make the most of it for myself. And by doing that for me, I'll be a better partner. I'll be a better lover. I'll be a better dad. I'll be a better son. I can repair, and everything is fucking fixable. It's never too late. All is forgiven. And that starts with forgiving yourself for the mistakes you make. It's taken a long road for me to do that, but it all can be done. All is forgiven.
I think before, I felt like I was living my purpose, which is, running Onnit, doing these podcasts, writing these things that I'm doing now. I was 30 before any of this happened. And I would look back and say, I must have gone off course at some point. It's all over for me. I fucked something up. I took a left when I should have taken a right. And here I am, never going to live my purpose. It's all, and I had these kind of self-defeating ideas. I still kept the faith. I kept that star of like, I'm going to keep fighting no matter what, just because that's my nature. But then, ultimately when everything kind of came together, and absolutely, I can only take the smallest amount of credit because of all the help that the universe seemed to provide, all of the pieces that happened to come together.
Yeah.
But then you realize I couldn't have done what I'm doing now without all of the wandering paths that I'd taken. So everything in my former path, all the pain, all the frustration, all the failures, they become redeemed when you realize I needed all of that to be the person I am now, to do the thing that I'm doing now.
And you can't figure that out until you have enough life experience that you can actually see what's always been there. And, like many young people come to me in my various programs and say, I don't know what my dream is. How do I find my dream? And I say, well, listen, it takes most people till they're about 35 to have enough life experience to even be confident in trusting themselves as to what their dream is. But what you need to know is that your heart is the compass. And right now, what your dream should be is to follow your heart and make doing things you love to do and learning things you love to learn more important than making money. Yes, we all need money, but if money becomes your prime directive, you can find yourself digging yourself into quite a deep little rabbit hole where all of a sudden you've got money, but you're unhappy even with your cool car, your nice house, and all the things that money might buy, but because you've prostituted yourself for money.
Yeah.
But if you're making half as much money, but painting the paintings you love to paint, or working as a landscaper because you love working with the earth, or something that you love, you'll find that you'll come to the end of where all of a sudden the painting's not so exciting anymore. And that's your heart saying you've now got enough of this lesson to go on to the next stage of your development of your legacy or your overarching dream. And it takes a lot of courage to listen to our hearts.
Yeah.
But we're not taught to listen to our hearts. We're taught to listen to our heads. And the head is a very dangerous director.
So when the conversation usually gets to this point, it's easy for people to fear the natural conclusion of this thought process of questioning everything. And it's totally natural because the logical conclusion of this infinite questioning is like a very bleak, nihilistic thing, which is, the universe is effectively infinite. It's vast, expansive space. Like we're a tiny blip on a tiny thing.
Pale blue dot.
Yeah, a little so it's very easy to fall into this hopeless, meaningless sort of nihilistic conclusion about existence and reality and all of this, which you can take that for what it is, or you can use that as an opportunity to create the meaning and the purpose that you want, or at least acknowledge that you're influenced by a lot of things that are shaping what you think you want. And, if I can play the role of Sherpa for a brief second, it's really dig and talk to other people and create connections and have a community where you can evolve the conversation to a point where you can have a really high level, deep, purposeful set of things that you want that are not going to change day to day or even year to year. Mm-hmm. Like come back to something that's meaningful. And when I think about that and when I reduce my existence and my purpose to something, I try not to have these grandiose visions of changing humanity and having influence and all of this stuff that's very easy to go to. But really it's, we exist, we think, we have thoughts, we're conscious, and we have a very finite amount of time to experience this thing that we're experiencing. So the question comes down to,
how do you make the most of this thing that you have? You know, what comes next or what came before or what does everything mean is somewhat secondary to the experience that you have while you can have it. And we have a lot of freedom and choice to dictate the context and the environments in which we experience these things. And in that, acknowledge that a lot of other people are going to try to manipulate you for better or for worse to want things so that they can get what they want, which is your money, your time, your focus, your attention, whatever that may be, and take some of the control back and just start to think about what is it you really want and who or what around you is there to help you get it, because this doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It doesn't have to be I trick you into buying things, someone else tricks me into buying something. We're all sort of like moving around Monopoly money, and the game always ends in somebody kicking the table and like everyone loses.
We have so many luxuries in our everyday life. We are so normalized to them, and we become it becomes just automated. And so it's how many different ways can we offer ourselves the opportunity to slow down and get in touch with gratitude. And sometimes that's through these big healing opportunities, like a concussion. The first severe concussion I had, well, it didn't really slow me down that much. The first time I ever slowed down was wearing the halo for 3 months. That was like finally something slowed me down. And it started to get me more in touch with gratitude for life, right? And so when people hear that I broke my neck, they're like, oh, wow, you're lucky, but wow, that must have been hard. I'm like, yeah, it was actually one of the best things that ever happened, because it really got me in touch with like the preciousness of our healthy bodies and the fact that we're in control of fairly little. Like I could get cut off by an 18-wheeler driving out of the parking lot on the highway. Right. Yeah. Like, and people in our immediate family that we know, crazy stuff happens. And crazy stuff may happen to us too. And if it does, may I accept that as hopefully medicine for my soul and be able to meet that with as much courage and dedication and humility. And I firmly believe that crisis precedes transformation every time. And if we're in many, because I work in the field of mental health and spiritual practices and like plant medicines and like all this stuff, so many times people are either asking for a transformative experience and maybe not knowing that there's going to be a crisis that comes before that to kind of stimulate us out of our usual way of relating to the world. It gets us out of our comfort zone. And there's a great spiritual teacher called Muji in Portugal, and Muji's fond of saying, don't build your house on sand. I mean, like everything shifts. Life is transient. Life is moving. It's always changing. There's so little that we're in control of. And if something does come in that snaps us out of our comfort zone, then maybe it's opening up us to something else that's just around the corner.